Welcome to the FarrCast. Thanks for joining us on this election week special edition. Now here's your host, Michael Farr.
Welcome back to the FarrCast. It is November the 7th. We are post-election figuring it all out. Markets have moved dramatically higher. Futures are called higher this morning. Interest rate decision from the Fed today. We haven't even talked about that. It better be 25 basis points, folks, because that's what Jay Powell said it was going to be. Anything other than that's going to increase the market drama, and we don't need any more drama right now. Really don't. We're covering politics heavier than usual today, as you can imagine, and I think probably makes sense. You know Matt Leffingwell, our regular listeners to the FarrCast, was with us in our early days 8 years ago. We're now in season 8, Matt, if you can believe it.
That's incredible.
Isn't it incredible? Matt manages the budget and appropriations practice at Tiber Creek Group, which is a Washington, D.C. lobbyist firm. He was on Capitol Hill, chief of staff to the House Appropriations Committee, chairwoman Kay Granger from Texas. This is an insider's insider. You can imagine, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a lobbyist in Washington, we've talked about Wall Street not knowing where to sort of place its money for either a Harris or Trump administration because it was too close to call. Remember, it was too close to call? I love Mahaffey's line, folks, that pollsters around the country are nothing more than astrologers, really. Tea leaves, they should get their tarot cards out. Their data is no better than those folks that do that. So, sorry to all you astrologers out there. Maybe I just maybe I'm insulting to astrologers. Okay, Leffingwell, welcome back. What do you make? Explain this election. How did everybody get it so wrong? What does this mean? And why did Kamala Harris lose by such a remarkable margin?
I don't know that they were that off. I was just saying to Harry that I don't think that the pollsters, got it that wrong. I mean, all the battleground states were neck and neck. And at the end of the day, the turnout push was just more successful for the Republican side. But yes, it was a decisive victory for Trump. I don't think that a lot of people in my circles never really thought that Kamala had a chance to win the election. So I have not been surprised all week, but what is sucking up the time is trying to help clients make sense of what's next. I mean, this happens during every transition. It's not unique to the Trump administration or the Biden administration was the same way during the transition. I think like what we're all kind of saying, us insiders, is that we're really grateful that the outcome was definitive and that we're going to have, it looks like we'll have a very peaceful transition of power.
Peaceful transition of power is certainly good. What are your clients? So you follow a lot of budget issues, certainly at Tiber Creek, and clients now are calling and saying what's the message from clients? We had people in tears yesterday, and then we had people who were chest bumping and thumping, and it was very difficult, frankly, to go from one call to the other where we're consoling or congratulating, and to keep ourselves out of it. I'm not paid for my political opinions. You are. I'm paid for my financial and economic opinions, but this is not my area. So tell me what you heard from clients, and tell me what you would tell my clients.
Yeah, I think they were agnostic, frankly, on the outcomes, and what they want to know and what their CEOs want to know is who's going to be in charge and who's going to be making decisions, and that is the first. Really the first moves that we make as consultants for these companies is trying to figure out who's who and what are the names. We're playing the names game right now. I'm on the phone with folks that I know that are close to the administration, trying to figure out who's going to go to the Department of Energy, who's going to go to the Department of Education, who's going to be at Treasury, who are going to be the decision makers and what are their ideologies. We're trying to make sense of some of the other campaign promises that Trump made, like what's going to happen in the first 100 days, what is this tax package going to look like? And I will say, unsurprisingly, I think most, Fortune 500 companies, 100 companies, they want to have some sort of influence in whatever tax package emerges over the next 2 years.
What sort of tax packages do they want? What do these larger folks want?
They all just want to help shape what it looks like. For example, like the defense industry wants to be able to write off research and development costs on the front end, and instead of spreading those write-offs over a multi-year over multiple years. That is a great example of something that an
Does
industry.
that make a big impact to their bottom line? I mean, it does immediately, but over time it doesn't. So why would they want to make that a particular priority? I mean, it's an accounting sort of
Yeah,
a
exactly.
change.
That's exactly right. I mean, but the defense industry, I mean, it goes with the whims of like congressional politics, right? I mean, you've seen like defense budgets go up and down, and contracts are at the whim of the government, essentially, of the Department of Defense. So for them, I think they believe that having this cash up front is more beneficial to their bottom line.
Washington has been a very contentious place. The Republican controlled House hasn't been able to get much done. Now, clearly, there's been a Democratic control in the Senate and, of course, in the executive branch. But they couldn't agree to pass a budget. They couldn't agree to confirm a speaker. So even if they were to keep the majority, or if will there be enough of a majority? Will they be able to get away from this sort of contentious, infighting, bickering, backbiting politics that have dominated Washington for the past number of years? Is there any reason to expect that even if it changes, they'll be able to get anything done?
No, right now the projections I've heard are that the Republicans will keep the majority and the margin will be 220 to 215. That is not a margin where you can like govern definitively without having to build some sort of coalitions with Democrats, which is what Johnson has had to do in order to pass spending bills over the last year.
Does Johnson keep his job, and does this make him more beholden to that far right, to the row of no, the fabulous five, if you will, who have been trying to hold policy ransom? Does a Trump win empower that side of the House and that end of the party?
They may feel emboldened, but like they're emboldened. They've felt emboldened in the past, and their efforts have really all failed. Johnson has done a really good job keeping them at bay versus how they treat him, like Speaker McCarthy, and Speaker Johnson has done a masterful job engaging the President Trump. President Trump has all but just come out and endorsed Johnson for him retaining his job. And if, I mean, it still has yet to be called, but if Johnson keeping the majority when he came in, mid-Congress, is pretty remarkable after being.
And he maintained his relationship with President Trump, former President Trump, pretty well, and he walked a very
Yeah,
fine line. And from my observation and perspective, he walked a fine line without sounding extreme
yep,
or overly conciliatory, but apparently sufficient to keep President Trump's support. That's a
yep.
tough thing to do. How did he manage to do that?
He just put a lot of effort into spending time with the president, and then in terms of the far right folks in the House, he spent a lot of time explaining his decisions to them. That was something that I think House Republican leadership had failed to do in the past. They just
Okay.
expected their people to get in line, and this speaker explained his decisions, even if the opponents disagreed with it.
He's a fairly young man, too, isn't he?
Yeah, he's 10 years older than I am. He's about 57 years old, I believe.
57 years old, 10 years older than you are. Okay, so he's got a fairly long runway in politics here, and if he is that sort of consensus builder, maybe there's a bigger future for him. The other thing about Speaker McCarthy, very effective speaker, but inside politics, if you want to know inside up on Washington, Capitol Hill in Washington, he was not well liked. He
No,
made a lot of enemies, and there were people who held personal grudges against him. I'm not telling you this, Matt. I know you know this. I'm telling our listeners. There were a lot of personal grudges against Speaker McCarthy. That if somebody says, "I just really hate that guy. I'm not going to do business with him, and I don't care what he says," that makes it very difficult to get things done. So.
correct.
Johnson is very well liked by both sides, and perhaps because he was so new, he hadn't had time to make enough enemies. So we'll watch. How does this change our position internationally? We ended with Mahaffey talking about our international relationships, and he said that foreign governments now are back to let's make a deal, conversations with Trump. what's it going to take? What's that world? What are you telling your clients that the international landscape is going to look like? And what would you be telling Xi Jinping this morning?
This morning I'd be telling Xi Jinping to be prepare for a trade war. I mean, I think this is a very, and I almost think it would have happened either way. If Harris had won as well. I think anti-China fervor is only growing, and I think that's a bipartisan position. But look, I think the Trump has been very clear that he wants to back away from the multilateral commitments that he feels are just bogging the U.S. down. Like the NATO is obviously the biggest question mark in how he engages with NATO. He's a NATO skeptic. I think clients are concerned that we back away from that commitment. The Ukraine. I definitely think you see him backing off, providing, more military assistance to Ukraine. I think he probably pushes them to try to make some sort of compromise and end the war. But, that is in order to do so, that would involve, Ukraine giving up some of its territory. And I don't know that the Ukrainian people, after being engaged in this conflict for almost 3 years, are just going to just accept that. So. We'll see. I mean, and there's still going to be powerful voices in the House Republican Conference, such as Mitch McConnell, who is going to go back to the Appropriations Committee as a rank and file member, who are Reagan Republicans and believe in international engagement. It's just becoming much more of a minority position in the conference.
Is it fair to say that Vladimir Putin is happier with this result than Vladimir Zelensky?
Yes, very much so. Absolutely. I mean, I think that this is a guy that Putin feels like can sway to his side, as was demonstrated by Trump's first administration.
If you were Taiwan, would you be more worried this morning than you were this time last week?
No, I think Taiwan is probably going to feel a little bit of the same. I think Trump's commitment to anti-China positions, militarily and economically are going to just be a continuation of the Biden administration, to be honest. I don't see there being a radical shift from how Biden was containing China.
Let's go to the Middle East quickly. Israel in a stronger position, Iran in a weaker position. What do you think?
I think Israel's in a much stronger position with the next Trump administration. I don't think he's going to be as concerned about, the Palestinians and the human rights concerns and the human rights concerns in Lebanon. I think he would rather see an Israel deal with Iran militarily than the U.S. being engaged. So I think he would make efforts to support that. So I think Netanyahu is thrilled to see Trump back in the White House.
I want to say this one more time. I've said earlier that my Republican friends, when I've raised some questions saying, I'm not sure that tariffs are going to be a really great thing. I'm not sure that we need tax cuts, meaning I don't think we need tax cuts right now at a time when we're trying to get inflation under control. That leaves more money in the system. It's actually a form of stimulus. And they continue to look at me, my great Republican friends, and they say, don't worry about it. He's not going to do any of those things. And I've said, I've not seen anything yet that Donald Trump won't do that Donald Trump said he would do. So what do you expect? So what do you see from this Trump administration you think would be off limits?
Well, look, I think he's going to have some limitations with doing mass deportations. I think he will, reinstate the, remain in Mexico policy. But I don't think.
Is there any reason to think that Donald Trump won't do what Donald Trump has said he's going to do?
No, I mean, I think he's going to have deportations up until when the courts get involved. I mean, the level at which he described during the campaign is just not going to fly, and it's going to cost billions of dollars. So,
speaking of the courts, is it Justice Sotomayor who is the oldest Democrat right now?
Correct.
I've heard a rumor that she is considering resigning shortly so that President Biden would be able to have a nomination and put another considerably a liberal on the court. Are you hearing that? Are there chances of that? And if he did it, could it get past the Senate?
Well, look, he could do that. But we've been in this scenario before, and this is at the end of the Obama administration, and Mitch McConnell was able to delay that long enough in order for Trump to actually make the appointment. So I think that'd be a really risky move if they want to retain a liberal seat on the court. But and look, Mitch McConnell would gladly play a role in punting that into a Trump administration.
Therefore, the liberals in our audience should be praying for the health and well-being of Justice Sotomayor every day. Is that correct for the next 4 years?
I pray for everybody's health and well-being.
And that's how he stays in Washington, ladies and gentlemen. That's how he does that. Matt Leffingwell is a partner at Tiber Creek Group in Washington. If you want to get it done in Washington, you call Matt. He'll help you. That's it for another FarrCast in a very odd and historical week in Washington, D.C. as we cover Wall Street, Washington, and the world. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for remaining calm. And we hope that we've helped you figure some of this out, providing some insight, some information, help you think about all of this going on a little better. We're going to be back next week, do the same thing again. Folks, never lose faith in this country. Never lose faith in our great republic. Never lose faith that as cloudy as the days may seem to some of you, we are still making progress, and we are still that shining city upon a hill. We need to strive to do better, be better, and expect more from ourselves. Be kind to each other. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. For the FarrCast, I'm Michael Farr. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us on this special edition of the FarrCast with special guest Matt Leffingwell. We'll be back with you next week with more on market reactions and investment outlooks with our scheduled special guest, Stephanie Link. In tumultuous times here at Farr Miller in Washington, we stay focused on dispassionate analysis and dogged research to serve our clients' interests and to help them reach their investment goals, no matter what the political and economic winds may bring. If we can be of assistance, please reach out to me at hjennings@farrmiller.com, and I'll be happy to put you in touch with one of our investment professionals to help you navigate your financial course. We are grateful for all of your notes and comments, and we try to respond to as many as we can. Please keep the emails and messages coming. Take care, stay safe, and stay healthy. We'll be back with you next week on the FarrCast. Wall Street, Washington, and the world. Farr Miller in Washington is a group comprised of investment professionals registered with Hightower Advisors, LLC, and a SEC-registered investment advisor. Some investment professionals may also be registered with Hightower Securities, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services are offered through Hightower Advisors, LLC. Securities are offered through Hightower Securities, LLC. All information referenced herein is from sources believed to be reliable. Farr Miller in Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC have not independently verified the accuracy or completeness of the information contained in this podcast. Farr Miller in Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC and any of its affiliates make no representations or warranties, expressed or implied, as to the accuracy or completeness of the information or for statements or errors or omissions or results obtained from the use of this information. Farr Miller in Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC and any of its affiliates assume no liability for any action made or taken in reliance on or relating in any way to the information. This podcast and the materials contained herein were created for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are solely those of the authors and do not represent those of Hightower Advisors, LLC or any of its affiliates. Farr Miller in Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC or any of its affiliates do not provide tax or legal advice. This material was not intended or written to be used or presented in any way to any entity as tax or legal advice. Clients are urged to consult their tax and or legal advisors for related questions.